instruction all across the state. Excited to be here today. My name is Marleny Perdomo. I am currently an assistant principal at Washington Lee High School, but up until 4 months ago, I was the World Languages Supervisor for Arlington Public Schools. Let me start by thanking each and every one of you who are present here and also across the state. I know it's been a long day of teaching and learning, and it's cold, and you know, you've got a lot on your minds, but your commitment to language instruction is evidenced by your presence today. So thank you in advance for your attention, for your any questions, suggestions. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm truly thankful to each and every one of you. Okay, so the presentation today is a presentation about writing goals for the World Language Classroom. And what I'd like to start doing is ensuring that you have the documents that we're going to be using through the presentation. You should have a copy of the PowerPoint. You should also have a page from the TEL framework. The title is a one-page with the content is planning. You should also have a copy of interpersonal communication can-do statements from the Necessful Actful document, and a template for writing instructions, excuse me, as well as a document that contains about 4 copies of examples of different types of goals. I'm going to ask that you stay focused, and rather than trying to go through all the documents on your own, I'll ask that you please wait to see those documents as we make progress through the presentation. And typically in my classroom or in one presentation that I give, I try to hold on to those handouts until such time during the presentation when I have to share them, because I think it's one way to keep the audience focused on the presentation. So we just went through the handouts that you should have. I hope that you have a pen in your hand and access to some paper, or write on the back of these papers, because I will be doing some writing as well. Not a whole lot, but yes, you will be asked to do some tasks. Okay, now that we've talked about the handouts that you have, let me start with showing a very quick video. So asking Sophia here, thank you again for helping. Sophia has been great today. She's going to help us put up the video that we need to see. Yeah. Well, you must be wondering, what in the world? What does soccer have to do with language teaching? For someone as passionate as I am about language teaching and soccer, I think it has a lot to do, because I think that in order to reach our goal, in order to score, I think it's important, very important, that we carefully plan, that we strategically plan and prepare to win. And I think when we do so, our students stand to benefit a lot. So that's why throughout this presentation, I'm going to be making reference to soccer. I think it's also it is very deliberate for me, because I always find a way to connect with the audience. And I'm thinking in my high school, students, I always find a way to connect with them. This is a hook. All language lessons begin with a hook, a warm-up, something that catches the imagination of the audience, or the students in that case. And in this case, I'm hoping to whether you like soccer or not. I am hoping to keep you engaged by, again, intertwining some of these ideas about how do we score and what makes us succeed in language teaching. I'm very passionate about this, and I'm super excited that we have the TEL framework to guide us in our planning because it is a tool that has given us the different behaviors, the expectations, the characteristics that identify a model world language teacher. And this workshop is focused on just one of the domains, which is planning. So I'm going to ask you, excuse me, to take a look at the planning page from the TEL framework and take a look at the, uh, the different points that we are addressing through the presentation. This presentation is correlated to the TEL framework. The connections are P1, 3, 5, and 7. And I'm just going to ask that you carefully read those because, again, the TEL framework identifies those characteristics that are exhibited by a modern world language teacher, and that's what this presentation is about, looking at those characteristics in developing language goals. So I'll take a minute, please, and take a look at the at the statements that I just mentioned: 1, 3, 5, and 7. Very good. Now that you've looked at these as sort of like an umbrella for developing your language goals, let's take another minute or so and on a piece of paper, think about a language goal that you're planning to teach in your classes. Let's think about a topic. Sorry, this is not moving. I was trying to click to the next slide. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to be completing certain tasks throughout this workshop. And before I go deep into the actual development of the goals, what I'm going to ask is that you write a goal for a language lesson that you're planning to teach. You can think about your curriculum, your whatever is coming up, and depending on the level that you teach, the language that you teach, just write down what it is that you're planning to teach. And don't worry, I'm not going to be collecting those. This is just for the purpose of developing the topic today. When you are done, I'm going to ask that you talk to a partner. You're welcome to share the goal in writing, or you can also talk about what it is that you're planning to teach. Thank you. Okay, thank you. We've had the chance to write something or share with our colleagues, and Here's what we want to do with that. Eventually, we're going to get back to these goals, so please keep that with you. Today, we're going to be looking more in depth at how to take the goals that we have and develop them into a SMART language goal. And we're going to do this by analyzing and discussing examples and what could be non-examples of language goals and understanding the characteristics. What is exactly what is a SMART goal? How do we turn a goal that we use in our lessons and make it into a powerful goal? Again, something that helps our students score that goal. We're going to be looking at learning to assess the effectiveness of language goals, and actually we're going to then develop practice with writing these SMART goals for world language instruction. The outline of the presentation, we're going to mimic again. I said that I was a soccer fan. We're going to think about planning, and then we're going to practice. And last, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. But I also understand that in the format of these presentations, sometimes there are questions that are submitted during the presentation, and that works for me. That's not a problem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the benefits of clear language objectives. Why is it so important? I am so passionate about language objectives, and I know that as teachers, this is an area that we always appreciate having more experience with. We know that when language objectives are clearly stated, then the teacher knows what and how to teach with greater specificity. We also know that when a goal is clear from the start, we can gauge, we can assess student understanding because we are anticipating what is it that the student is able to do vis-a-vis the goal that I have formulated for them. We also know that when a goal is clear, students know what is expected of them. It's not a guessing game. If I know that the students should be able to know and do this by the end of this class, then they need to be clear that this is the expectation that the teacher has for them so that they can then perform according to that expectation, to that goal, and they can themselves feel confidence because once they are able to accomplish what is the stated goal for the unit, they develop self-confidence. And we all know that a self-confident student in a one language classroom is a student who is going to want to continue speaking the language, who's not going to shut down, who's not going to take out his cell phone and completely get distracted because they are excited about being able to do something with the target language. And the other piece that is so important, because I work in a in a public school district in a classroom setting, in a high school setting, I think it's so important for those goals to be clear because then the parents, when they ask, what is it that my child is doing in Spanish 3 and what should I be able to expect at home or when they are doing work, you can clearly articulate, share those goals with them, and it creates a conversation, it creates a lot of support for your program when the goals are clearly stated. This is not clicking. I apologize, I'm trying to click from my keyboard, but it's not working. So we're going to aim high in developing our goals. We're going to make sure that we set the students up for success. And part of that is to ensure that we take this idea of a SMART goal and make it applicable to the classroom. Teachers in Virginia are used to the SMART goal because we have used it for teacher evaluation. And all of us have written about it. I know that my colleagues from FLAVA have provided trainings on developing SMART goals, and that has been so useful. So thank you, Jane Carson, and I think also Linda Sobolski and all supervisors and other teachers that have worked at the state level with Lisa Harris, also to provide these ideas and on developing SMART goals for teachers for the purpose of teacher evaluation. But we also have to realize that we can take everything that happens in creating a SMART goal and take it to a daily level, to the classroom, so that the students can experience success in that. We can plan according to these different components. A SMART goal is specific in the world language classroom, that means what can students do with the language? We should know that. Measurable. How do students show that they can do it? My SMART goal, the way I write my goal for the classroom means that when I'm planning that goal, I'm also looking at how am I going to know that they can actually accomplish it? Is it appropriate? Meaning, is it authentic and communicative? Is what I am asking the students to do in my class developing an authentic task that leads to ultimately building communication? In other words, what is it, what they're doing? Is it something that is used in the real world that they're going to need in order to communicate? And then the double R's means is it realistic and is it relevant? So realistic means can they really do that? And is it meaningful? Is it meaningful to them according to their age and who they are? And then time limited, is it what kind of time frame am I setting for the students to accomplish this goal? Let's take a look at, this comes from a classroom that I visited at some point. And so let's take a look at this slide. And this is posted for the students. I want you to turn to your partner and talk about what do you see here? And do you perceive this according to what I just shared? Is this, do you see this as filling the SMART goal categories, what you see posted here? Let's just talk for a little bit with our partner next to us. Thank you. My colleagues here say that they see it as vague, that the students would not understand it. Okay, so if I am judging this by the different terms of this being a SMART goal, I think I would say red card. In red card in soccer means you're out. So again, let's take a look at another the next slide. Thank you. And again, let's think about it. Would this qualify as a SMART goal based on the different expectations of writing a SMART goal? Okay.
No. But it's like more of a lesson plan.
Okay.
Better, but not.
Okay. Very good. My colleagues here say yes. This is more of a lesson plan. It's a little better, but I would say still not specific enough. And it gives a guide of where the students are going to find certain information. And please, let's be clear that it is important, very important for the students to know what page of book to look for or what exercise they're working on. Think about a student who went to see a counselor, for example, and came back in the classroom and needs to know what's happening. Typically, they'll turn to another partner and ask, and the teacher may perceive that they're just talking about something else. This gives an idea of a map of what's happening in the class. So I'm not saying that it's not necessary that it should not be posted. I think it's important to take into consideration that there is different things that the students can have access to, but it doesn't necessarily qualify as a SMART goal. So another red card. Slide. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the different components. How do we make the goal specific? And this is one where it's so important for us as language professionals to ensure that we have clarity, knowledge, and understanding of the different components of language acquisition. So for example, if we know that we want the students to accomplish something in the target language, it's very important that we understand what is it that the students are able to do depending on the different level that they find themselves in. For example, if you have a level 1 student who is in the middle of the year, we've got to select the task that is going to be that is according to their proficiency level, what they are able to accomplish. So it's very important for us to go back to the resources that we use, of course, our curriculum, and also the framework that is provided by our district, but we also have an excellent tool that I encourage everyone to always be looking at, and it's the actual document that lists the different modes of communication and also the different can-do statements. So let's take a look. If we can click on the link here. Okay. So I hope that everyone is familiar, of course, with the work of ACTFL and all the resources that are available through this wonderful organization for language professionals. This is the go-to place in addition to the resources provided by our wonderful state organization, FLAVA. The can-do statements give you the progress indicators for language learners, and in this document, which I hope that you print and keep a copy of, you can go, yes, go to page 4, please. You can look at the different modes of communication so that you know, one more time, thank you, one more page, so that we know where are the students that we are teaching and which, where do they find themselves? Are they novice low? Are they novice mid? And what does it mean? If you have a student who's performing in each of these levels, what is it that they can do, that they can sustain on their own? And that's important to know, because then that helps us as teachers to go back and say, okay, this task that I have prepared for them, is it adequate? Is it going to lead to success? Is it going to make my students feel that they can actually accomplish the goal? And are they going to feel successful language learners? So a little later, we're going to revisit this page. But right now, if you can just go back to the screen, I wanted to make sure that you are aware of these as a resource for language teachers to have, so that when they are planning, they are also thinking about, what is my student? How can I make it specific enough that they can accomplish the goal? And at the same time, which mode of communication am I going to be developing? Is it going to be the interpersonal? Is it going to be dialogues that they're going to perform in class? Or is it going to be interpretive? Is it going to be the listening or reading? And it's also so important for us to know that this language that we use can be taught to the students early on. Those who are going for the AP level, and I hope it's all of our students, they should be aware that this language, that seems a little bit of jargon, but it's okay, we can handle that, that you can pose those tasks developing the different modes of communication later on when they are past level 5 and taking or at level 5 participating in AP. It's going to be very beneficial for them to understand the different types of tasks and the modes of communication that they are developing. And so we need to understand their proficiency level. We need to know our language functions well. And by that I mean, we need to know what is it that one does with language. Language is used for writing a list. It is used for giving directions. It is used for asking questions. At a more advanced level, it is used for comparing and contrasting, for analyzing, summarizing. Those language functions are very important to know, because it's going to help us develop tasks that are varied and not always having the kids do the same thing. Write a list of vocabulary words. Write a list of vocabulary words. Now we understand what is it that one student can do with vocabulary. For example, make a shopping list for the supermarket. And we're going to get into this a little bit more later. And it's also very important to understand that the specific goal is going to help you move away from housekeeping and classroom management rules. Yes, those have to be there. Students need to know what homework they have and be clear where to find it. Can they take a picture of the homework that is posted? How? Those things they have to know. And they also have to have classroom management rules. But in the two examples that we saw before, those are mixed. The goals aren't clear enough, and what the lesson is going to accomplish is also mixed with things that we expect the kids to be able to do in order for the classroom environment to be conducive to learning. So we've got to be careful that when we're talking about language goals, we stay true to the goal, the language learning that needs to take place in our class. Next slide. Oh, now I do it. Okay. How do we make it measurable? Well, now that we've identified what it is that we want them to be able to do, now we know we've got to be able to very specifically state how is it that they're going to show that they can accomplish what we told them. So I always encourage writing the goal as students will be able to. And in addition, we also want to say how. So there's a two-part to that goal. They'll be able to do this, and they are going to show that they can do it by doing this. Throughout the presentation, remember that what I'm stating here is making sure that our goals have those two very important parts, because simply stating what we want them to do doesn't guarantee or doesn't lead to them showing you that they can actually do it. And of course, we design activities that are geared towards accomplishing that task. And at the same time, in order for the goal to be measurable, we need to have systems in place to monitor the students, their performance. And all kinds of systems. You know, some people walk around with a clipboard and they take notes. They think about, they hear the students, they write exactly verbatim what the students are saying so they can give feedback later. Other people have a point system. They have whatever works for you in terms of helping you monitor student performance, other than did you understand it? And which most kids will say yes, they just want you to get off of their face. And so we just want to make sure that we know how they are actually demonstrated that they can do it. In order to make it appropriate, it made me think of an old joke. It's like, you know, does a fish really need a bite? I don't think so. We've got to make sure that we give the kids authentic real world tasks that, again, communication is the ultimate goal. And in doing this, we need to say, okay, so what is what is their developmental age? Some of you teach elementary school, some of you have high school. Excuse me, students. And it's important to recognize what they can do at that age. I remember a task that I saw once for fifth graders where they had to do something about renting an apartment. Well, that's not appropriate because they don't have any idea of what one needs to do in order to rent an apartment. So we select those tasks very and the goals very carefully. The goal is also appropriate. We know that if it is clearly developed throughout the lesson plan and it is allowing you to assess student understanding, then you have an appropriate goal for the students to accomplish. This is very important because we've got to be really careful in how do we make goals relevant and realistic. We've got to make sure that we develop goals that students care about, that they can relate to the task. Some of the tasks that are provided, especially in older books, we've got to reassess and provide a different spin to the task. For example, having a teenager write a formal letter to a friend, we've got to be able to evaluate and question some of those and realize that the power is within us as teachers to make changes. And think about, well, my students, my high school kids, number one, they don't write a formal letter to a friend. Instagram is what works for them. So let's change the task and have them write something or a text message or something that is really going to engage them, hook them to the task, but still be able to complete the task. And ask ourselves, do they really want to know these? Do they really need to know these? Again, if a task is asking for a student to learn how to open a bank account, we have to say, well, is it really something that they need to know now? And then having a time frame that is realistic for them. I always say, let's move away from having students know all the conjugations of a certain tense and ask for mastery when they aren't ready. Let's be realistic. They will need repetition and exposure and real tasks so that they can learn how to apply the grammatical points that we teach them. And at the same time, recognize that they are not going to be mastering, and that's okay. The AP exam, thankfully, has moved away from, mastery and asking for putting too much emphasis on the grammar. It's about communication. Can they really communicate and complete the different tasks? And we also have to be mindful of the time, which is if I know that I've got a group of kindergarteners, I've got to plan my goals so that they, considering the age that, that the attention span that they have, and think about tweaking it according to your own understanding of your students, not what the book is telling you, because the book is a guide. It's a great resource to have, but you do the tweaking based on how you have measured the goals and how well the students have been able to meet them, or maybe you need to give them extra time. And we also need to understand that with our students with special needs, it's super important to be able to have flexibility in these time frames that we provide them, not only because we are legally required to modify according to their IEPs, but also because everyone in our classroom should have the chance to do things in their own time. We know that babies don't all learn to walk at age magically when they turn 1. And so when we think about language acquisition, we also have to realize that some people will achieve mastery faster than others, but we just got to be mindful that the times that we give them for these goals, we've got to be to make sure that it is realistic. And so also we need to remember that we're going to be practicing when you set your goals, you also think about my lesson now, but when am I going to revisit this goal later? Because language learning is cyclical and it doesn't end when the chapter ends. I am going to get back to those functions that are asking me for directions. That's something that I'm going to do now when I talk about vacations. I'm also going to do that when I'm talking about the family. I'm also, I'm always going to come back to those, because with any skill, and language learning is a skills-based type of intellectual activity, with any skill, practice makes permanent. Practice doesn't make perfect, and that's important that we remind the students. It's not about perfection, it's about them developing the skills so that the language functions become eventually permanent with them. Even if they are not sounding perfect, we still have to give them those opportunities. Okay, so I don't know if I have taken a look at some of those questions that are coming in, but I think I'm going to take a quick break just to look through the questions and see if anything has come up, and then we're actually going to get into practicing how to develop some of these SMART language goals. Are there any questions there? Does the audience here have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. You're such a good audience. Okay, for this second part, it's not clicking. Yeah, thank you. For the second part, this is what participants will be able to do. Demonstrate their understanding of the topic developed here by writing a SMART goal on a topic of their choice. In this case, I'm going to select weather. So the choice in this case has been mine. Eventually, you're going to get to choose your own topic. We're thinking that this is high school level 2 at a proficiency target of novice high. And we want the students to be able to ask, describe, compare, which are functions that are typically developed at level 2. The mode of communication developed here is interpretive reading and interpersonal speaking. Remember again that these modes, the best resource to go for reference is the one that I shared with you from the ACTFL and Assessful Can-Do statements, and it's provided through a link in your PowerPoints for those of you who will have access to these electronically. And for this particular task, the Can-Do statements, the selected from LinguaFolio. Again, the link takes you back to the Can-Do statements that are now posted through ACTFL, but if you Google LinguaFolio, you will come to these too. The Can-Do statements are, I can ask and give weather information, and I can compare the weather, and I tweak that to say in February in Virginia versus Buenos Aires, Argentina. So before you actually go and practice, what I'm doing is something that I think it's very important for language teachers to do, and something that in my own observations, I believe that we don't do as much as we should. And that is being able to model for the students what exactly we want them to do. So eventually, I want you to be developing a SMART goal. But before we do that, we're going to walk through the steps of how to develop a SMART goal related to these topics in functions and can-do statements. And we have a copy, you all have a copy of can-do statements from the document that I saw, that I just shared before. The can-do statements, I also encourage you to have these handy because it's a really good way to be looking at your instruction and thinking about the proficiency targets that you have set in your programs and going through these can-dos and using them both as a guide in planning, but also eventually as a self-assessment tool, something that your students can show you that they can do, not just to mark that they can, but to show you that they can do, complete the task or the activity that you have asked them to do. Okay, so let's take a look at what essential language is. This is according to my own curriculum and what is it that we want the students to do and learn. So it says the students are going to express the weather in 2 different places in the target language speaking world. Okay, that's a goal for my curriculum in my district. And I've got a language objective here that states that students will be able to listen to a partner's oral description of the weather in in Buenos Aires. Okay, there's a little bit of a typo there, but this is what I want them to be able to do. Now, if we think back about what we discussed in terms of the SMART goal, what do you think about this language objective as is stated right here? Does it make it a SMART goal yet?
It's not time specific yet, is it?
I haven't written it time specific, but I'm saying, let's say that for this lesson, we're going to accomplish this. So this is, I can write that this is in this lesson, my students are going to do this activity. But I also want to say, remember that we talked about the 2 parts? I want my students to be able to listen, but then listening, I know that they are listening, but then they have to demonstrate what they are able to do with their comprehension, right? So when I add the second part to the goal, I make it, if I'm saying during this lesson, the students are going to be able to do these, and they're going to listen to the description of weather card, that the weather in Buenos Aires, but then I am asking them what they're going to do with what they're hearing. Is that clear? So the idea is that listing the goal is just they're going to listen to the description of something is not complete until I verify what is it that they understood from what they heard. So if I'm asking them now to identify using a matching flashcard, so if it says está lloviendo, it's raining, and I have a set of cards in front of them, and when they hear está lloviendo, they point at it's raining, then I can, as a teacher, go in and check, oh, they understood está lloviendo. But if I only play the audio clip where there is a description of the weather in Argentina, of Buenos Aires, but I don't verify that they understood, then I don't really know that they understood. Is that clear? So 2 parts to the goal. When they listen, and they are going to do this. And as a teacher, I'm able to assess, are they getting it? Or if they are not, then I'm going to go back and do a quick review of flashcards saying, está lloviendo, está nublado, está nevando, something that makes the students identify, using their visuals, what it is that each of those cards describing the weather is saying. So 2 parts to that goal. Now let's look at the speaking goal. And this goal is going in tandem. So listening, speaking. Let's say here that I want the students to answer with accuracy, when I ask the question, what is the weather like in Buenos Aires? Okay, so if I'm asking, what is the weather like in Virginia? because then I'm going to ask them to compare with Buenos Aires, right? And the students are going to be able to answer. I need to know exactly what it is that they're going to be able to state. And this is where I can actually say that they can answer in two different ways, supported by visuals. And I can add more to the goal saying they are going to answer using the vocabulary list that I provided with the lesson. Because what I'm verifying as a teacher is, can they correctly say, describe, está lloviendo, está nublado, or is it está nevando? So I need to be able to always have a way to measure and know if they can state verbally the task that I'm asking them to complete. Any questions? And I see a comment, and I appreciate that, saying I would prefer describe or express or exchange information about your county. Thank you very much. I think that that's a very important and clarification. I think as teachers, we can tweak those goals again to say, based on my students' understanding or based on my own expectations, I may start with just saying, describe the weather, or I may start with saying, describe words related to the weather. And eventually later on, when they can do more about this topic, I may want to have them express how they feel about a particular type of weather. You know, do they prefer something? So that's when préférer and gustar and je préfère, j'aime bien, all of those verbs that we teach come into place in a real task, because the weather is one of the things that we love talking about, don't we? Rather than saying, today you're going to conjugate gustar in the present tense. See the difference is that gives you some grammar background, but we never go around just conjugating verbs in order to communicate. Thank you for that comment. I see another question, and thanks so much for sending. I'm sorry that I haven't been reading those, but Bedford County is saying, do you have students create visuals, flashcards, or have class sets that you have done? I have seen so much talent and so many ways of using these. The number of images that you can find in Google Images is limitless. And we're trying to save paper, and sometimes you just don't have the time to go and create all of these things, but you can select images from Google Documents and from Google Images and post them as a PowerPoint, and then have the kids go manipulate those if you have a smart board, or eventually maybe even make copies and laminate them so that you can have them for the students to use. And for little kids at the elementary level, they just love, I think anybody actually loves having hand manipulatives. But if you can make those sets and have them after you complete this task and model for them and let them see that, let them show you that they can do it, then you can have them go and do. Remember what we said, practice makes permanent. They need to go and practice. If you're talking about the true novices at level 1 or in a FLAS program or the beginning levels of the immersion program, you can just have them manipulate and do all these before they can actually perform and show what they can do. So many ways to do it. I know some sets of you know, some publishers give you the sets of cards, and so that saves a lot of time. Other times you can just have the students create them, but just one word of caution here, having the students write or make the cards can take a lot of time, and it's not a linguistically enriching activity. So we've got to be careful that we don't let them spend 2 hours making a card so that they can speak for half a minute, right? I mean, time is precious. And in the world language classroom, keeping the students busy just for the sake of keeping them busy is not going to lead to communication if that's the kind of activity. So it's fine to have them create, but I think high school kids are quicker because they can cut quickly. You know, with elementary age kids, I would say have the materials ready for them so that you don't waste a lot of time creating the materials. Thank you for that question again. Excuse me for a minute. Okay, so now moving into the other language objective for reading. Reading is one of those objectives that in my experience visiting and talking with teachers and visiting classrooms, it's not specific enough. Reading is usually listed, and for those of you who are ESOL Hill teachers who, that have listed, content objectives as well as language objectives, we've got to be extremely careful that we list the task that the students are going to complete, the goal that you have for them, but also the how. Otherwise, it becomes a goal for the visitor, for the administrator, for the whoever is reading that goal, but it's not clear what you want the students to do in order to show. So for example, if we say the students is going to read 4 or 5 weather descriptions, that's a goal that I have seen listed many times. So they're going to read, for example, llueve en Argentina durante el mes de abril, or it's raining, and whatever it is that they have to read, and then they read it, but then they're done. How do you know that they understood? And so the second part of the goal is super important, because you've got to say, in order to know if the students have met the reading goal, they have to demonstrate their understanding in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, the interpretive, you think that they did it, and you check, yes, I am teaching my students the reading goals, but then how do you know that they do understand? So the second part of the goal would be show comprehension by identifying with a visual. Or they can read, and then if they're younger students, you can have them trace to the right image, or you can go around and have them read and then show you on a piece of paper what it is, which weather description they're reading about. So again, now they read, and then they showed you that they understood. Same thing goes for literature. Are they reading about something? Well, then they write the essay, or they answer some comprehension questions. And hopefully that's not the only way they are demonstrating their understanding. They could use mimic. They could get up and do something, to understand, to show their understanding of what they read. But again, there's got to be something, especially in those beginning levels. We've got to be really careful with selecting the tasks that are going to allow the students to show their understanding. The writing then would be, let's say that we have we put them all together here. So when we look at the goal that we have stated for them, and we're careful to select to develop the different skills, then our language class becomes rich. It's not just about listening to the teacher. We do a lot of speaking, just like I'm doing now, sorry. And the students do a lot of listening, but oftentimes we are not making sure that they have the time to do the skills that are more engaging, and the skills that actually could be even more difficult. And the one skill that they love more, and we know this, our students have reported that they love speaking. Once you give them the tools, they enjoy it, because that's when they know that they're being, it's easier for them to be understood. Okay, so there's some questions coming in. Do you support having students okay, here's a question from Carol Bass. Hello, Carol. Do you support having students respond to questions in English or target language in lieu of pictures? Oh, what a great question, Carol. I think that this is, in my opinion, when you want the students to show their understanding, yes, you encourage them to use the target language, but you don't want the student to get frustrated because they understood something but they don't have the words. And when they begin to use their language to express their understanding, that's not a moment when I'm actually correcting their grammar. I am leaving them alone. It's so important for them to feel that they can express what they are understanding. We're selecting the goal. If we said we want them to show us what they understood from the reading, then I am going to accept code switching. If they tell me half of the answer in the target language and the other half in English, but they are showing me that they understand, great. My goal was, can they understand what they're reading? I'm going to worry about, can they say it a little later? And by all means, I am not going to discourage them from speaking by always wanting them to say it correctly. Because imagine if you as a as a mother, if you always, when your son or daughter wants some milk and they say, me want milk, and you say, no honey, you say, I want milk, please tell me I want milk. We never stop to correct a kid, and no, we just give them the milk, and because we understood the message, and little by little you need to be releasing that control and knowing when is a good time to revisit the grammar. I'm not saying the grammar is not important. It is important, but there's a place for it. And when you're developing the understanding and they're showing you that they can complete the task, then I think that's fine. Anyone who is in an immersion program understands this. If you're teaching mathematics and you're looking for what they understand about mathematics, then you let them express. And then later on, you can take note of some of those things that they are saying that they need to have the support for, the scaffolding. And then later on, you can say, oh, by the way, when you compare something, I want you to use this sentence in the target language. And so that's a really good way to address it, but not at that moment. Thank you, Carol, for that question. Okay, let's move on. So now, thank you. Okay, so we're celebrating again soccer, but I think it's also important to say we go back to, if you go back to the slide before where we're saying, in looking at the goals that we're writing, let's go back to these categories that these different components that we're very familiar with in writing our own goals. Is our goal specific? When I talked about comparing the weather from the target language culture, which was Buenos Aires, Argentina, in Espanol, and the weather in Virginia, I was very specific about what I wanted them to do in that comparison. Can the students do it? Certainly, level 2 students can do that task. Eventually, they're going to be able to do much more, but yes, they can do that. Is the goal measurable? Can they show me how to do it? Yes, I can gauge because there's a product. The product is what they are turning in or what they are doing as I'm walking around the classroom checking that they are completing the task. Is it appropriate? Yes. Is it authentic? Yes, we talk about the weather, and knowing what the weather is like in another country is super important. If you're going to travel to Argentina and you want to go in the summertime, you better go now. And is it meaningful? Yes, the kids have the language that allows them to start a conversation because the weather is something big. You know, we always try to break the ice by talking about the weather. And is it time limited? I did not state it there, and thank you for pointing that out. But as a teacher, I know that I am going to give them, through the end of the class to do that. Other times, other goals may require longer, and it depends on your instructional time. Do you have block schedule, or are you in a FLES program where you see the kids only 3 times a week or twice a week? Are you in an immersion program where you see them daily, but your specific language instruction is, it's only 20 minutes, a half hour? You set those time frames, again, according to your curriculum, your needs, your students, and so, in whatever logistics you have. I think we have another question here. Oh, Carol, she said that, yes, the teachers appreciated the clarification about using English. Okay, yes, I think that's important. In fact, Carol and others around the state, if you happen to use a test, like one of those, let's say, either the stamp or the apple from ACTFL language tests, when they do the reading comprehension, the fragment that the students read or the text is in the target language, but the reading comprehension questions are in English. Because when you're measuring what they understand, you don't want the language of the question to get in the way of expressing your understanding. In other words, if the question is in English, then you're focusing on the text that you read and answer about it, not on do I understand the question. I hope that I made myself understood, but that's a reality of tests that are not. We use the stamp in Arlington. But the apple is another assessment that is really, really good and worth looking at. Okay, so so now that we determined that, yes, this is a SMART goal, I want you to now work on a task. And what we'll do is give you the opportunity to evaluate the language goal that you have written at the start of the presentation, and let you work with partners so that you can edit, revise, and take a look at the goal that you have and see what would you change about it to ensure that it is specific, that is measurable, that is authentic, that is attainable, that is relevant, and also to make sure that you have given yourself a time frame for accomplishing. So as we said, part of the training will be to talking about the, the what goes into developing the SMART goal, but I think it's very important that you take time to work with something that you can implement right away in your classroom, hopefully tomorrow. So in doing this, you have just 1 minute. Let's take a look, for example, as your partners, you have in your packets the next slide. So we have here one of the essential language already selected for you. And we're going to have the students know places in town and use prepositional phrases, informal commands, and for functions, we want them to ask for, understand, and execute directions. Okay, so we've got listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I want you to take a look at the slide where you have just these, don't go forward yet, just take a look at this slide and think about, if I want my students to understand the directions that somebody's given to them, then what would the second part of that goal look like? Remember that we said we specify what we want them to do, and we also specify how they are going to do it. Can someone restate for me what you're going to do with this task? Or can you restate for a partner what you're going to be doing in this task? I'm going to repeat. And I'm saying you read what you have in front of you, and when looking at each of the skills for listening, speaking, reading, and writing, you will see what is stated in the goal, and then think about that what I am stressing is that when you state your goal, you've got to make sure that you know how the students will demonstrate that they accomplished that goal. Is that something that is clear? If it's clear, then you can restate that to a partner.
Okay, we are coming up with how they will indicate that they have actually understood.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so now with your partner, you can work on what would be the how they can show you that they are understanding directions.
On a map.
Yep, on a map.
So you would read to me, go to the right, go to the left, and on the map I would have to follow along.
Excellent. Excellent. So one of our participants here says on a map they will have to read and show how you would go left, right, to the north, to the south, or so. Okay. And in speaking. So it says orally, you give 6 or 8 step-by-step instructions on how to get from one place to another.
So how to verify that they've done so.
So you're checking that they are actually completing that.
Could be they give oral directions to another student, and if the student can get from point A to point B.
Okay, very good. So student moving from point A from point B. Point B. Oh, there's a question that is coming up. Do you see all 4 skills in each activity you do, speaking, listening, reading, and writing? Excellent question. And I am a big proponent of developing the 4 skills to some extent in each lesson. Because language learning is not about just one skill. We develop the different skills constantly. Of course that, with beginners, they need a lot of input, but there are activities that they can complete at least for the speaking. So with the beginners, we emphasize a lot of the receptive skills, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we develop the productive skills. So developing the listening, but also developing the speaking. And they go in tandem, because when I listen and I can say something about it, or I can produce something, then it's important that I am able to do that and given the opportunity to do that. So for example, at beginning levels, even just saying the words develops many of the skills that are going to build longer chunks of speech later on. But it's important to say, give them the opportunity from the start to say things. Sometimes at the beginning it's just oral repetition. Sometimes it is words. Remember that the novice learner functions in the word level. They can understand more, but they can function at the word level, and that's fine. I think it's important, depending on the age group, that they do, of course, for languages that have the same alphabet, it becomes a lot easier. With Spanish, for example, there's so many cognates. So by all means, take advantage of those cognates, and they can begin reading, supported by visual clues. I think it's important to start, and the writing has many different forms. It could be when they're writing, they could, beginner students could be simply just copying a word, or taking taking one word from a document and just being able to match it to something else, but like an image. But I think it's important to have those in mind. Now, how much time you develop each of those is going to depend on the type of student that you have. And many times you have to realize that with students with accommodations, they may not always be able to develop the same skill or to the same extent as the other students. So writing, for example, would be a lot more challenging for a student who perhaps, is already, one of the accommodations would be to use, to type, or to use, because they are not, handwriting is a problem. So, you need to be able to make those accommodations for them. And sometimes instead of writing a paragraph, you may need to tweak that and say, you can write a sentence, or you can drag different words to create the sentence. So it's important, I think, that you bear in mind that you can develop, and you should aim for having a nice mix of activities that develop all the skills. I think kids also appreciate the variety of activities and not just spending a long time on any one activity. Another question is, okay. Oh, okay, someone is writing an information gap with 2 students for understanding and giving directions. Absolutely, that's a great activity. I love, and kids love that, information gaps, so that they can complete the task. Following along on a map, identifying the endpoint, that's one of the ways that I would see, gauge if they are, to assess understanding. They can also be, that map can be used for more than one activity. They can be using it for the 4 skills. Eventually, they can use the map that you gave them and to just write the descriptions for somebody else to follow, and they are going to show how they can use informal commands. If that is something that you're teaching in your level 3 and that you're using, instead of teaching just the imperative on its own, this is the application. Can they say, ve aquí, ve allá, va ici, cherche something, I'm forgetting my French, but I'm saying this is a great way for you to mix some of those grammar points that you're teaching, that moves away from, let's just conjugate this verb and only use the informal and the imperative commands. This really wraps it up for the students. Anyway, so let's look at this one here. If we have students, and I know that we also have perhaps some immersion teachers here, so think about how you can tweak this for when you're teaching content as well. And I'll provide some examples a little later. But say if we describe whatever topic while viewing a diagram, what else can we do with this activity? We say, okay, so if someone is describing the topic, when they are using a diagram, then you can insert the key vocabulary in an oral description of the topic. So I can mix, my, what is it that I want students to be able to do with the vocabulary, how, and assess if the students are indeed using the vocabulary correctly when they are performing this task. Again, two parts. Make sure that you have the activity, but also how they are going to be demonstrating to you and to the others, but that becomes your assessment right there and then. They can listen to what a partner is saying, and they can be recording the answers on a chart. I think it's really hard when you have kids do a presentational activity and they get up in front of the class and they've got a nice collage or something that they are showing, and the audience is not doing anything about it. And that's disheartening for some kids as well, but it's also a missed opportunity because the audience should be able to do something with the information that the student is presenting. So for the student, the activity is a presentational activity, perhaps some research that they did, or compare whatever it is. But for the audience, that is an interpretive activity. And you hold them to that task. You say, I'm going to give you a chart where I want you to select, 3 important facts that the student is exposing and explaining, and then they have to submit that as a way, as an assessment that shows you that they gave their respect to their classmate who spent a lot of time preparing that. Also that they made an effort to stay engaged throughout the class because they are paying attention and doing what a good audience, such as all of you, does, which is to be engaged in what activity is happening. And then it's also a way for you to get back to the students later on and say, okay, I see that some of you missed this point about so-and-so's presentation. So it becomes a teachable moment, a teaching opportunity for you. And then another question is, can you provide, excuse me, it says, okay, can you provide an example given different activities for diverse learners for the same lesson? Very good. I think that that it's important to recognize that, yes, in our class, not everyone is going to be performing at the same level, and that we have some students with different needs. And I think you could have one of the modifications that is important to, I think, to recognize is that the number of tasks that students complete in a given lesson may be modified for students who need additional time. So while you've got a certain group of students completing, let's say, tasks 1, 2, and 3, you may ask the students on the side of the classroom to complete task 1. So for example, rather than having a map with 2 different tasks, one for listening, one for speaking, with multiple steps, you could change the activity for the group over here and saying, okay, in this particular activity, you have to complete 2 of the steps. So they are participating in the task itself, and it's not going to become evident that it's going to be any easier, because in reality, it's not going to be any easier, but you give them the benefit of tweaking the activity in a way that recognizes that they still perform, they are held accountable, there are expectations, but you give them additional time for completing the task. And thank you for bringing that question, because I think that we've got to be careful in selecting and modifying instruction for many of our students, but also for students with, in particular, for special needs, because it's great that they are participating in the world language classroom. And we need to be cognizant that it is our duty to modify instruction for them. I also recommend, of course, you're working closely with your special ed partners in your schools to determine what are some of the accommodations that can be provided for the student in the language classroom. The question about, okay, so let me move. I always like to think excuse me, in developing my goals and think, okay, can someone, if I'm asking the kids to develop these, is it observable? I mean, can I actually go in the classroom? Sometimes in supervising classes, I really appreciate when I go in and it is so clear to me what the students are being asked to do because they are developing the activity with ease. They are not guessing, they're not asking somebody, they don't look like they're lost. You know, the goal has been stated clearly for them. The teacher has modeled the activity for them, gave them an opportunity to do the activity, and then uh, got back at the end and said, okay, this is how you did the activity, and this is some feedback that I have. The other piece that is going to be really important is that we write the goals in student-friendly language. So when you look at the SMART goal, the way we design our instruction, we can use a lot of jargon and a lot of words that we understand. But when we talk about the students, I'm sorry, when we talk about developing that for students, we need to be careful that we state them in ways that they can actually understand and that they can actually verbalize and repeat to themselves or to someone else. Let's take a look for a minute at, I don't, excuse me for just 1 second. We have also to recognize that for immersion classes, and I know that we have some teachers here from Spanish immersion classes where there's a lot of reading and writing that takes place because of the amount of time that they, but not just Spanish immersion, but any immersion class, that it's a lot of reading and writing because they have more time for instruction, but also because immersion programs have a goal to develop language skills, reading comprehension skills, almost at the first language level. So it's important also to stress that they always have to have the two part, and it happens not only when you read or fiction, but you can also do that when you're working on science or mathematics. That it's so important to have. And I used to be an immersion teacher. I forgot to say to talk a little bit about my background, but I know that oftentimes we have this sustained silent reading, or we have the kids go and try to just do some reading on their own, but we have to remember that second part to say that there's something else that they need to do with it, whether it is science that we're teaching them or social studies, or if we're teaching them developing the writing, it can happen in the content as well as just in the language class. Here's an example that I included here for the immersion class or for teachers who are in the ESOL Health program, where they have objectives stated in a way that they tie to mathematics. So for example, if teaching math, and we can do this in our regular language classes too. Kids love it when you go across content areas. It's one of the 5 C's of communication, that we go across subjects and explore other subjects and teach them the language of that, of mathematics, and not necessarily get into the mathematics, but to say, I can express a number relationship, or I can discuss a graph. I can talk in terms of, I can do these things which are very useful in the real world. Of course, we use math on a daily basis, but it's important to, again, say, I can do these things. If I'm going to order numbers from least to greatest, which is a goal, a mathematics SOL in Virginia, here is how I develop the language objectives that go along this content goal. So I can use a number line, make sure that my partner is assessed for accuracy. I can tell the kids the numbers, they can write it, they can do an addition problem, they can express relationships of, is it greater than, equal to, etc. And then also do the reading and writing in mathematics, but targeting a language goal. And I know those of you who are trained in SIOP, this is also a great emphasis of the SIOP, which is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It's also a great emphasis that you do develop both the language and the content objectives at the same time especially for our ESOL, ELL students. There's a question that just came in. A teacher would like to know, and this is from Prince William County, what level of proficiency would this be at? I would say, actually, this goal, I used to teach in an immersion program many years ago, and I used to do this in my 4th grade classroom, which was, so after 3 years, I would say our target is a novice high level. And again, remember that I'm asking them to be able to express their thinking in mathematics. And I am giving them the sentence beginners, the scaffolding. So I'm already providing them with these sentence structures that they can use in order to express their mathematical thinking. So if they had to compare two numbers, I already provided for them es mayor que, es menor que, and we had repeated that. So they don't have to be thinking about the sentence that they have to use. They just rely on that sentence, but then they concentrate on the mathematics and they are able to make the comparison. So I would say a novice high, they did it quite with a lot of ease, I would say. And going back to that, thank you for that question. I think it's so important at all levels, not just beginners. I recently observed an IB high level class, and the level of fluency for these students is amazing. I mean, these kids are going to take the IB exam for high level at the beginning of May. And the teacher was masterfully designing her instruction in a way that she provided the scaffolding that the students needed in order to participate at that level. So saying things like, in my opinion, I disagree with you, I beg to differ, but those types of beginning sentences that even if you are confident in your language skills, you go back to what makes you feel really comfortable. So what I was hearing the students say at the beginning was, yo pienso que, I think that, I think that, I think that. It was getting old. And then the teacher went back to these conversation beginners, or how do you express an opinion? And pulled up, 6 or 7 different ways that one uses to express an opinion. And then the kids just felt good about it because then they had something else to begin their interventions with. And it works at all levels. Whether in this example with beginner students, novices, they've got to have those language chunks that are going to help them feel confident. They've got something to stand on so that they can then express their understanding. Thank you so much for that call, for that. I feel like I'm a radio talk show. Next caller, please. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, so the other piece that I mentioned before that I'd like to elaborate on a little bit is how to share with the students. And this is super important. I have seen a lot of new teachers in the classroom, and I think that I confess that I made the same mistake. You've got all your activities planned, you've got everything ready, the kids are so engaged, you don't realize that time is passing, the bell rings, and they walk out of the classroom, and you never had a chance to revisit the purpose for that lesson, the goal. And so we've got to be careful and be very strategic about our timing. If I have a 51-minute class, I'm going to give myself time at the beginning to talk about the goal, center the students into what instruction is going to be, let the lesson unfold, and give myself sufficient time at the end, if they have to do some cleaning or, putting markers back where they belong, whatever housekeeping you do at the end of the lesson, but then get back to get their attention again and go back to that beginning goal and have them in some way, shape or form, express that they got whatever it is that you intended them to be able to accomplish, that they did. And some of it would be an exit ticket. I saw Lenny Bronstein, our FLAVA Teacher of the Year, in one of her classes. She's fantastic at doing this. When the students leave the classroom, she stands there by the door and they've got something that they need to say or do before they walk out. And she's got a time to perfection. Believe me, those kids are not getting late to their next class. And these are middle school kids who, sometimes refuse to do things. I don't know about you middle school teachers, but I think you're magicians. And it's because from the beginning, she has set that expectation. This is what we're going to do. We are going to complete the activity, and you better be thinking about how you're going to show me that you know what we did, because you're not leaving the classroom until you tell me what you understood. And it's fantastic. I think the kids walk out with a feeling that, oh, I can do these. And then also, when you ask what are they doing in class, they can think about it because they have had the opportunity to do that little bit of reflection or maybe long reflection, but they are clear on what they did in each class. So I think at the beginning of the lesson, it's very important to post your objectives. If you use Smartboard, you can just have it on a slide and get back to it at the end. You can quickly have someone read it if they are at that level, or you can have it discussed. Now, if you teach Chinese or a language for which reading is going to come, but it's going to be a little bit harder, I don't think that should hinder you. You can post it in English. That's fine to post. Eventually, they're going to be posting that in Chinese or Japanese or whatever language that uses another alphabet. But I think it's important to have the students state, or this is you, the teacher, state, today we are going to do these. And then let the kids at the end say, okay, what is it that we did? With younger children, you can have them state in English, what can you do? I can count to 10. I can count the number of teddy bears in the pattern. With high school kids, you can have them state, I can listen to a story in French and be able to retell you some of what happens in the story. They can just write about it. They can keep a journal where they can write it. However, but please make sure that you are sharing those goals with them. You don't have to write the whole, my students will be able to. It can be a can-do statement. And again, I explained that you can get a hold of these can-do statements and you can tweak them according to the topics that you are teaching, but they become a really powerful tool for you, for this, and then for the students, because you can just also print those for them and have them self-assess so that they can they can show you what they have developed in the target language. Remember that I said at the beginning, they develop confidence. And a confident student is going to go from level 2 to 3. They're not going to quit the language if they feel that they can do it. And so just to make sure that you share them and you can in different ways and to revisit them at the end. Okay, so for this task, let me see if there's another question. Okay. Okay. The can-do statements, someone asked about self-assessment, I think is, yes, this has been used as self-assessment in, in our district, we've modified them a little bit. The one thing that it doesn't necessarily, not all of them perhaps say, is the second part, is like kids will confidently say, I can do it. Yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can. But it's like where the rubber meets the road is show me the money. Show me that you can actually do this task. And if they don't know it, that's okay. They can just say, this is something that I'm working on. This now becomes my goal to be able to do by the end of the of whatever time frame you have accomplished, that you have established. I mean, so okay. So now I said that we were going to have the opportunity to practice. Remember that at the beginning of the session, you all wrote a goal. And I hope that you kept that. And so what we'd like to do is now I'm going to ask you to take a look at the goal that you wrote and reflect on the components of the SMART goal. Is my goal specific enough? Is it attainable? Is it, relevant and realistic? Is this a goal that we have set a time, or am I clear as a teacher how long is it going to take the students to develop the goal? And make sure that you look at your goal again and think about your own lesson development and writing and say, okay, what is it about my goals that I can change? You can use either the goal that you started with for those of you who have novices, you can tweak the goal completely. If now you think, I don't think I'm going to use this goal, you can rewrite it. You can do so with a partner. You can use the resources from LinguaFolio if one of those matches what you're going to be teaching in the tomorrow or the coming week. And you can also use as a resource. I brought here. There's a maybe 4-page packet that comes from 2 different authors. One is by Kate Kinsella and Tonya Ward, and the second part of this document is I'm sorry, it's two authors. And then there's another list of sample language objectives by Andrea Hellman. And you can select some goals from this list that you can tweak according to your instruction. Is whatever works best for you, and make sure that you have, again, the components that make it very strong, but also that you have the what you want them to accomplish and how are they going to show that they have accomplished. So I'll let you work in initially individually, and then you can also work in pairs. I provided a template that we have used in my district. It actually is the work of, comes from Robin Lighton Tejada, who's a specialist for ESOL Health. But then we changed it for our world language department because we wanted to make sure that in planning instruction, teachers are mindful of addressing the different skills so that it's not just focused on listening or speaking, but that they develop goals. So you feel free to rewrite the goal using this template. And then what I hopefully give yourselves about 5 2 to 3 or minutes or so. And then if anyone wants to share their goals, that would be great to actually see them on the screen. So for now, I'm going to work with my team here, and I ask that you also work with your teammates where you are in each of the sites, and then I'll be back online briefly. Thank you.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think the sound was supposed to be off while we were discussing there.
Yeah, but I think it was supposed to be off. Thank you so much. We're having a rich conversation here, and the sound was off. I was hoping that you were having the opportunity at your sites to be talking about how you can tweak your goal to ensure that that you can post it for the students in a student-friendly language, that you are meeting those characteristics of the SMART goal. So one of the questions that came up here, and I don't know if you've had sufficient time um, to work on your goal. I think it's been 3 minutes at least, right? I mean, and this is something that you can continue to do. My hope was that you would look at the SMART goal characteristics and ensure that in developing or redeveloping your goal, that you go back and think again: is my goal, strong enough in terms of, is it attainable, relevant, realistic, and it's is it something that the student is relevant for the students? And then when you prepare the goal for the students so that you can post it for them, is it written in a student-friendly language? What we write in our lesson plan, especially if your school is asking for lesson plans on a weekly basis. I don't know how each school operates, but the bottom line is, and what I really want to stress is that many times we write these goals and they are very elaborate, but we don't break them down enough for the students so that they can take ownership. This is about scoring. Remember that I made that. This is about the students feeling great about their language skills. And you feel great when they feel great. But the way to get them to feel that way is that they need to own the process. And I have seen so many examples of, great teaching when you are clear from the get-go of what is the goal for that lesson. And then you bring the students back to that goal and you know what they are able to accomplish because you have that evidence. And I think that there are times when a teacher may have so much, and we always have so much in our minds, but we also spend too much time on planning the activities, and the activities are not always conducive to communication. And so then we wonder, why is it that the kids are not responding, or they're disengaged, or they don't really speak, or I spend all this time with these activities, but they don't understand it well enough to be able to do it on their own. And we go back to, how did you, in your planning, identified exactly what you want them to be able to know and do by the end of this lesson, or the end of this quarter, or the end of this, whatever time frame you have, and then say, now that I know what my level 1 students should be able to accomplish in this quarter, in this unit, in this year, I am going to plan my activities so that I can get to those goals. And so what's driving your planning is, you're starting with the end in mind, backward design. You go there to what happens when you score, when, going back to the metaphor for soccer, and you say, it didn't just happen by accident. All of this was carefully planned, was carefully designed to ensure that the kids get to that successful point where they can say, I can communicate in the language. And I love, and you fill in the blanks, I love French because we do all these things, and because I can find speakers of another language and they understand me and I understand them. And that's where we know that we've succeeded as language instructors. When we know that we've been able to build in our students the skills that they need to communicate in the target language, whether in writing or in speaking, and all the other things that come with it. Are they understanding, the culture and all the other components that, of course, we didn't touch upon those, but that is exactly what we're talking about here. I don't know if there's another question. One of the questions from the group here was, how are the goals posted? I think it depends on I think it depends on your classroom environment. If you have a cart and you have to move from one classroom to another because you're an itinerant teacher, you can have the goal written on a piece of paper that you just post at the beginning of class and you take with you when you leave. But if you have a smart board or any other type of, electronic way of communicating that, you can just have the slide and then develop the lesson, but go back to it at the end. There are teachers who distribute those as to the students. I mean, that's a little bit more, takes more paper certainly. It varies, but I think you've got to find a way to display those for the students. And the other question was, does the whole plan, sometimes in some places you are asked to display a full lesson plan, and I think in this case, I think what I'm saying is make sure that it isn't overwhelming for the students, that they can actually articulate it. And it's great when they can go home and somebody says, so what are you doing in Spanish class or German class? Oh, we are learning how to negotiate a cab fare from, or we're learning how to bargain when we go to the market. That's a useful task. It's authentic, and it's fun. It's and if they can verbalize outside of class what happens, believe me, it's great. The parents will come back and say, oh, we went to Mexico and my kid was able to say this and he got us through. I don't think there's a parent who comes back and says, oh, Ms. Perdomo, we went to Mexico and my kid did great on chapter 2. That's not gonna happen, because it's about what can you do in real life when you have to use the skills that you've been developing and learning in the classroom. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I think it's very important for you to continue to develop the plan. Hopefully, I believe so passionately about planning. I think successful instruction, that's where it begins. I think I heard maybe Grant Wiggins say once that 80% of the success in your teaching is your planning. And I don't know if it's that high or not, but I really think that it's something that we've got to go back to and pay close attention to and use all the resources that we have at hand in order to be developing successful language program that is going to lead to our kids developing language skills, becoming global citizens in the end. That's what we want. I don't know if there's any questions that I can take. I'm going to move it to the next slide. Yes, I'm seeing that there's a question. Oh, okay. My friends at Chesapeake are saying thank you. Actually, thanks to FLAVA for being such a wonderful organization and for doing
birthday?
all the work. Yes,
Oh my
it's my
gosh, happy
birthday. I'm so passionate about languages that I could not think of a better way to celebrate my birthday than to be here. And thank you again to Dick for the invitation. He and I connected at FLAVA through working on he's engaged, of course, also with the implementation of the TEL framework. And I'm excited to be able to share this passion and my experience also with all of you. And I wish you much success in language teaching. I think we're in a great place in terms of more and more kids taking languages. And that's really exciting.